Hello, we're back in the rant room and we're having another reaction rant. That's 2 in a row, I know, more than my allotted, but please forgive me. One, because internet men are just acting really weird right now, and also I'm kind of a little bit stressed because COP26 is happening and I don't know if it's going to go very well. So aside from doing stuff in my local area and trying to like keep up with it as much as I can and email my MP, I've also just been taking these kind of moments and trying to make them learning experiences, trying to think more deeply about how we're engaging with the climate crisis and what seems to be going wrong, because so much seems to be going wrong, and I think today's topic is an interesting one. So MrBeast and Mark Rober are trying to raise £30 million to clear up the ocean from plastic. Sounds nice, right? I think so too, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought this is a very bad idea. And I'd like to explain why. Now, these two gentlemen, I don't know them. They look very nice. They sound very nice. They seem very nice. I mean, everyone can do it for 5 minutes, but, you know, I've got nothing against them. And I also am passionate about not blocking smaller actions like eco tools and things that aren't exactly perfect. I have a video about that up here because I do think those things factor into bigger actions that more urgently need to happen. But I just... Who planned this? So these two internet celebrities have been going on loads of like American talk shows and talking about how amazing their project is and how it's going to change things, and like everyone's been praising them for it, and actually loads of celebrities have got on board with it. Also Elon Musk is involved. But to me, like after about 2 minutes of just chewing the fat and thinking about the plan, I was like, I don't know if is this a good idea? So basically, the video is them going to the Dominican Republic and cleaning up some of the oceans. So they're raising money to try and take the rubbish out of the oceans and therefore some of the rivers in the Dominican Republic. And they're also using some of the money to clean up other parts of the ocean. Now, the problem with the focus of this campaign being that is manyfold. So £30 million. Sounds like a lot, right? That's incredible. And for every pound that they raise, a pound of rubbish gets taken out of the ocean. Smackers, great. Apart from when you think about a lack of legislation and what I hope is incompetence but may actually be intentional shoddiness from the people that are attending COP26, means that 8 million metric tons of plastic go into the ocean because of humans every year. Now, I notice I said tons. Do you know how many pounds that is? Which is what our Mark and Beast are measuring in. 8 million metric tons is 17.6 billion pounds of shit. Sorry, plastic. Now, one of the ways I've misunderstood figures before is one, because the measurements are different. So obviously them expressing what they're taking out of the ocean in tons makes it sound bigger than it is, especially at scale. And also because when we think about billions, I kind of like most of the time can't get my human brain around that. 100,000 million. 100,000 million. They're taking 30 million pounds, but we're putting 17.6 billion pounds in. Do you see the problem here? Now, I'm not saying what they're doing isn't a good thing, and I don't want to make this a character assassination, but I would imagine them being on board with us trying to get this right because, you know, no influencers on a dead planet, to put no finer point on it, among other things, but no influencers on a dead planet. But thinking about the kind of resources they look quite confident to be able to gather, the use of those resources to be able to prevent and clean up plastic can quite obviously be used in much better and more effective ways. And Mark is 41. Like, he's 10 years older than me. I don't want to, like, he worked at NASA, like, he must know this. He built that incredible squirrel maze. Like, use that strategy, Mark. There's no way he doesn't know this. There's no way. MrBeast, 23, nobody likes you then anyway, I guess. So maybe we need to give him a break, although his channel is like, it's the Wild West out there. His channel is basically capitalism on steroids, but what he is good at is getting people's attention. He's good at telling a story. He's good at surmounting and like playing an algorithm so he gets the most amount of eyes on him, which means that when those eyes are on him, he's got quite a lot of power. surely the amount of power it would take to actually start talking about legislation and other reasons why all of this plastic is going in and they're only able to take this much out. It kind of feels like an attempt to go and rake leaves in the back garden, like, oh, this just naturally happens and we've got to clear it up. Rather than like something that 100% should not be happening in the first place. So assuming that they are intelligent people, why are they ignoring this? And this reminds me a lot of this part of the book that I'm reading, again, called We Are the Weather, where it talks about An Inconvenient Truth, the documentary, and how Al Gore left out the idea that maybe we should stop eating animals as much in his documentary. Like, it was such an obvious part of the statistics and there's no way he didn't know it, but he failed to include it, and that was real weird. He made a documentary 10 years about how the documentary hadn't really made any difference, so we can assume that maybe what he omitted affected that. With a lot of people, politics can become something that they think they can opt out of, something that they think they don't want to get involved in, and also when you're an influencer, something that can become quite polarizing, can lose you money in the long run if you start talking about rules, laws to protect people rather than just the effects of things. I think as a species we need to get over this fear of getting political, because getting political just means talking about the strategy of what we do next, and without a strategy of what we do next, we're fucked. Basically, we're fucked if we don't have that. And I'm not saying that what they're doing might not inspire people to go on and do other things, but without some kind of hint, some kind of direction from these men, there are going to be loads of children and families and like organizations that are going to feel like what they are doing by giving them money is their tick box for the day, is their like, we did it, we helped climate change, next. And I think, frankly, it's irresponsible to not at least acknowledge that. I'm happy that they're doing that, but to not acknowledge who shat in your backyard is just, it's just weird to me. So one of the reasons I think might be because they don't want to get political. And the second reason I think is something to do with trying to swoop in and separate yourself from the problem and become the rescuer. Interesting that they set the video in the Dominican Republic and then when they were trying to work out where the rubbish came from, they said this line: "It became pretty obvious where the trash was coming from." And then, no joke, they go and visit this community that is incredibly deprived and has no way of like disposing of their waste. And they do acknowledge that, but they really focus on the fact that they are in the Dominican Republic. That is where the problem is. And these are the people that are making the rubbish. And they don't even talk about lobbying the local councils to give them bins. Like, it's wild. To put that in context for you, they need not have travelled far. The USA, where they are from, is the second biggest producer of single-use plastic waste. UK is probably, I think we're about fifth, so like no shots fired here. It's also bad here. But it furthers the idea that the problem is elsewhere. Another reason I think is that they lack an understanding of how recycling and waste disposal works. And don't get me wrong, like I'm very much a layperson when it comes to this. I don't know loads, but I have read a bit. And when they talk about what happens to the plastic, they're like asking everybody for money to take out of the ocean. They say, whatever can be recycled is recycled, and the rest is properly disposed of using local waste management systems. Which we all know is not a thing. I think it's less than 10% of all recyclable plastic. So not even all plastic, but all the recyclable plastic is actually recycled, especially if it's been sitting in the ocean with loads of other stuff and being contaminated for, I don't know, years. And right now, we know where most Western rubbish is properly disposed of. It's in other nations. It's I'll leave the links. We don't have time. But like, when they say it's being properly disposed of, we need to talk about what properly means. So what can we learn from this very strange collection of videos? Well, I'm not saying they're doing bad, but I don't know if we can claim to say that this is good, that this is progress, that this will help. In fact, there's a kind of subtle misinformation to this campaign that suggests that all we need to do as citizens is give more dollars to lift more pounds of plastic out of the ocean, which is so not the case, I can't even cover it. They did do this campaign about trees and they planted like 7 million trees, I think, which was really cool. And in that they acknowledged that it was an interceptor and it wasn't meant to be a final solution, which I liked. Bring that energy forward, please. But the big thing I think we can take away from this is that we cannot speak about the effect of something without also speaking about the cause. This campaign is more of a gesture than anything, and a weird one at that. And it's also perhaps a lesson, even for me, that we can't just shift what we're currently doing and then theme it for a month on the climate crisis, because especially the premise of MrBeast's channel is like, not that. It's to theme his channel around something like this contradicts everything. Just a few rows down from this video is a video of MrBeast putting 1 million Christmas lights on a house. And also maybe the last little point is just to inspect within ourselves, like, what is our relationship to this? There's this passage that I wanted to read from We're the Weather that was really interesting. I want to care about the planetary crisis. I think of myself and I want to be thought of as someone who cares. But these identities, which I flaunt like an exhibitionist at dinner parties, inspire responsibility less often than they get me off the hook. They don't reflect truth so much as offer ways to evade them. They are not identities at all, only identifiers. The truth is, I don't care about the planetary crisis, not at the level of belief. I make efforts to overcome my emotional limits. I read reports, I watch documentaries, I attend the marches, but my limits don't budge. He talks about this difference between knowledge and belief, like we can know things, but when we act like we don't believe them, then we probably don't believe them, and we need to concentrate on that. But he also talks about this notion of crowd waving, when you're like, woo! Like, nobody ever really knows who starts it, and you never really feel like you're in the mood to do one, but when one comes, the mood comes with it, and there's no way for you not to join in, you know? Why wouldn't you? It's already happening all around you. And perhaps this ocean cleanup can be part of that part of the solution, a very small part of the solution, but a change in culture. This podcast that I listened to, they said something really wise. They said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So maybe I'm being moody and this is actually part of a slight cultural shift. And I don't want you to come away from this video feeling like anything you do isn't good enough or isn't going to make an impact. But it is in fact, again, the impotence of individual action is a reason for everybody to try. Basically, I think that maybe their contribution is a little bit shit, but also my contribution is a little bit shit. Everybody's contribution is a little bit shit. But if we keep doing loads and loads of little shitty things and not stopping at giving a pound for a pound to get out of the ocean, or not feeling like that is job done, we can actually get somewhere, half-hearted and imperfect as we are. Another example that Jonathon Safron Foer gives in this book is about an ambulance, and how if you really need to get to hospital fast, would you rather have a driver who passionately loves his job and has always wanted to be an ambulance driver but will get you there slower, or an ambulance driver that hates their job, is kind of resentful and moody, is tired of everything, but will get you there very fast? I very much feel like I want to be the moody ambulance driver. I'm not always going to feel enthusiastic. I'm not always going to feel like I'm being perfect, but I do want to do the most effective job. I don't want to feel good. I want to survive, and it's not always going to feel fun and enjoyable and clickable. It's not always going to make a good story. But these guys are great storytellers, and they are great at garnering attention and telling stories. So if anyone's going to tell a more nuanced story, it could be them. I'm really excited to see what they do next. Maybe they'll do something different, hopefully. Maybe. But let me know your thoughts on this below. We're all in this together, obviously. No people on a dead planet, let alone influencers. So I don't really see this as sides, or like these people do wrong things, these people do right things. But I like to hear from you, like, what you think about these kinds of campaigns and how you struggle maybe with understanding statistics like 1,000 million is a billion. Like, I know that, but I can't believe it. Thank you so much for watching, and to the Gumption Club, who tip me per video to make sure all of these videos are free for you to watch. You might like this series called Positive Panic I made just about this. I promise it won't make you panic. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see yourself here again. Frog Snog out.